I'm having camera issues, ladies and gentlemen, so this week you get to look at a slideshow of words while I croon to you through my microphone. I'm going to try my best to articulate properly. Meanwhile, I hope you've enjoyed this picture of a stern cat.
10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
The default. Last week we talked about a writer who deals primarily with the characters who are straight, white males. In the example I used, the author was explicit about it, up front. Their character was a male with white skin who liked females. Interestingly, even if the author wasn't explicit about that, even if they didn't mention once, not anywhere, anything even remotely to do with their caste, skin color, gender, or sexual orientation, almost every reader in the world would simply assume they were white, male, and straight. It's important to remember that as I talk about a common complaint when it comes to diversity. No need to be so heavy-handed. Some authors I've spoken to and plenty of readers that I've spoken to have held a firm stance that if it isn't relevant to the story, then you shouldn't be mentioning things like skin color, religious belief, sexual orientation, etc. Their rationale seems to be that if we're going to have equality, drawing attention, especially unnecessary attention to these things, is making a big deal out of something that simply isn't. I understand where they're coming from, I do. But the problem is that your diverse character then becomes invisible, and in the eyes of the reader reverts back to the default. Straight, white, male. Dumbledore. He is the shining example of exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody knew Dumbledore was gay until years after the final book was published, when J.K. Rowling mentioned it in an interview. Some people praised the idea that the character's sexuality wasn't seen as a big deal, or wasn't something that needed pointing out when the story didn't call for it. Except that it made Dumbledore an invisible gay character. He can't count as a gay character because everyone thought he was straight. There were no clues to the opposite within the text. Nobody suspected a thing because Dumbledore fit neatly into the default: white, male, and straight. This doesn't make Dumbledore a bad character, but it does make him a bad gay character. At best, he does nothing to make the representation of gay people more common and accepted. At worst, he reinforces the idea that being gay is something to be ashamed of and kept secret. It doesn't matter if that was the intention of the writer. These are the facts as they exist. In Harry Potter world, a gay Dumbledore doesn't matter. In the real world in which Harry Potter is read by us, a gay Dumbledore would have been a significant contribution to the LGBT representation. Fight the default. If you have a character who is not the default, it's an asset to your story. People are looking for them. They want to see them. If you don't give them enough information about those characters, they can't see them. They're default. Describe them. Bring it up. Make comments and include dialogue about it. You don't have to make it a bad thing, and you don't have to obsess over it, but put the information in there. Interestingly enough, it may actually take repeated references to these traits before people will divorce themselves from the current mental image they've got. People who read The Hunger Games, for example, didn't catch that Rue wasn't white. When they saw the film, they were confused why the actor had dark skin. The information was in the book, but they still hadn't connected the two. That's what we're up against. Diversity is difficult to achieve because it's resisted by nearly every reader and writer in a way that's difficult to understand. People's brains are going to actively try and whitewash, gender wash, and straight wash your characters. Don't give those scumbag brains that opportunity. Make sure there's no mistake. If your character isn't default, let the reader know.